Hey everyone, quick check if you guys can hear my voice.
Yes.
All right, thanks. So welcome everyone for this Intune session, Intune demo session of Microsoft Endpoint Solutions and Microsoft Intune to be specific. Let me see if you guys can see my screen. Okay. All right. Just a quick check. You can speak or you can type. I'm just trying to understand what sort of audience have we got here? Like, are you already working on Intune, or are you looking for learning Intune from scratch, or you don't know Intune? Anything would do. Maybe you can speak up or just type in. Intune. Yeah, I'm admitting them. Hopefully everyone should be in now. Okay, so all right, need to scratch, expand new platform. All right, so we got a response like most of the people are trying to learn from scratch, and many of others are shifting from a different platform to this one. All right, so we'll start from scratch. Okay, so I'll not start with the level 100 or 200. I'll start with the basics. So Microsoft Intune is basically a mobile device management solution. Obviously, it will not make sense for now, but through the course of this period, we will discuss why exactly is Microsoft Intune needed, what was done previously, how the cloud management is progressing, and what is the future of all these technologies. So if you are looking towards learning of Microsoft Intune, I'm pretty sure that you have already started your cloud journey. Whichever organization you are part of or you're still trying to learn for any interviews, you would have to work with different set of technologies which is Intune dependent on, or the Intune collaborates on a daily basis. So let me just share you the next screen. All right, so on a daily basis, or mostly, if you can see, these are the primary technologies that you'll be working with alongside if you are working on Intune. So let's say if you are an engineer working for a corporate where your team does all kind of mobile device management, your team will have to deal with a few of the network part, few of the Azure Active Directory and third-party softwares or operating systems. If you are looking to get a job within Intune space, if you have experience with all other four technologies, it will be easier for you to learn Intune. Although it's not a requirement, but once you start working in Intune, these are all the things that you'll be working with. So it's good to have all those exposure. Networking is basic in Intune. Like you need to understand what a proxy server is, how that does work, what the DNS is, how does TLS work. It will be used while troubleshooting one of the extensive scenarios that you guys will face in Intune. Okay, one of the scenarios that corporate uses Intune is to deploy a Wi-Fi or a VPN profile. We'll come to that when we are in that particular module of helping you understand how exactly Intune comes in into the Wi-Fi and the VPN deployments. Azure Active Directory and AD. I'm pretty sure that most of you would have a basic understanding of what an AD is. It's a collection of users, groups, your applications, information, and SPNs where the authentication is happening. Azure AD is also a cloud form of Active Directory, but is much advanced. So Intune, if you say Intune is basically a SaaS application, software as a service, which is dependent on Azure AD for authentication and authorization needs. Okay, there are still few participants. Okay, I'm just admitting at them now. Give me just 1 minute, guys. Seems few people are waiting. I think everyone should be in now. Okay. Okay, I've just accepted 4 more. Yeah, added 1 more. All right, this is getting recorded, so don't worry. Even if you have joined a little late, we'll be able to share you the recording and you can go through it once again. Okay. So, okay. If you're not speaking, can you guys please go on mute?
अबे चुप रहना मैं म्यूट में नहीं हूँ
All right, much better now. So for the folks who have joined recently, all right. Sorry for the noise, guys. So for the folks who have joined now, we are just discussing about what are the related technologies that you guys will have to work with when you're working with Intune. These are the basic 4 parameters of 4 technologies that I have mentioned. It's just not limited to this, but there are different other things also, which we'll discuss over the due course of this session or this course actually. So the most important thing that people actually forget or neglect to start with is if you're working on a cloud software as a service application from Microsoft, it is always good to understand, or it is always good to start your journey via Azure Active Directory. Now, if you directly jump into Intune, there will be a lot of scenarios there which might not make sense, especially when there are lots of authentication being involved. Now, with respect to authentication, the authentication is handled by Azure Active Directory. So Intune is nothing but is just dependent on Azure Active Directory for authentication and conditional access and such other things. We'll discuss those in detail, how exactly that work and the coming things. So uh, if you're working with Intune on a daily basis, you'll be kind of directly or indirectly working with Azure Active Directory, M365 applications, Windows, or any of the operating systems that your company uses. Most of them, let's say, go with Windows, Android, and iOS. But now the Intune also supports Chrome OS and Linux. So if your company is into Linux, they can now get those Linux devices enroll into Intune and can utilize conditional access. Okay. Um, with respect to Azure Active Directory, this is a demo session, so I'm just going very brief about what exactly are the different things. So with respect to understanding why even do we need Intune, why there was a need of understanding Intune. Okay, I see a few people waiting. Let me add them. Yep, this should wait. All right, for the folks who have joined just now, we are recording this session. So we'll be sharing you this session and you should be able to go through it once you have the time, okay? All right, so the important thing to learn is why do we even we need Intune? What was done in uh, the past, what the companies were used to do when they were just the AD and not the Azure Active Directory, and what are the different other things that Microsoft is doing with respect to Intune. So if you go back, or if you reverse the timeline of technology till like 5 years or 6 years, you will still see that many of the corporates were on the local Active Directory, and they were utilizing their on-premises infrastructures for authenticating users, authenticating devices, managing all those devices, creating application and all such sort of things. Now, when there was a outburst of giving the corporate access to the user friendly devices, like if you are into sales and you want to have an application which does also all sorts of function for you, and you want your data or your corporate data to be available on mobile devices, the architecture of the architecture of the technology happened in such a way that the corporates were now forced to give you access to whatever place or whatever system that you want. So it no longer is
Intune का होगा
dedicated.
Intune.
So it's no longer a dependency on you going to log into your corporate office or corporate network, and then all you will have to access the corporate data. It is now available on your personal phone also. Now it's the responsibility of the corporate uh, um, technology stakeholders to make sure that you as a user are able to access all that data, but at the same time making sure that that particular data is secure. Now, the whole thing is basically about the security and about the data and about a user and device authentication. So let's say I want to secure my corporate data on a device which you are accessing, or maybe it might be a personal device that you are accessing. Now, the whole set of the dynamics of IT changes because you are no longer in office network, you are no longer on an office provided phone, you are no longer using an application which maybe your office have approved. Then how do we take control of the corporate data? Because data is everything, data is money, right? So we have to make sure that the data is secured in every way. Now, there are different Microsoft products which are used in different segments of protecting the data. Now, if a user is trying to access certain corporate data, how I'm making sure that the user remains secure? At that point of time, Azure AD comes into picture because Azure AD has technologies like it does the authentication, it does the multi-factor authentication, it does n sorts of different number of things to make sure that the users don't get hacked or the users are not compromised, or even if they are compromised, they are aware that which user is compromised and what action I need to take, right? In a similar manner, the third one is the data itself, where you have all sort of DLP, Microsoft DLP solution, which is now called as Microsoft Purview, where your corporate might be using Microsoft Purview to make sure the security goes with the data. So it's the security which goes with the data. Now you have something protecting the users, you have something protecting the data, but what with respect to the devices through which that you are accessing those data? As a IT admin or as a IT corporate, you will also have to make sure that the devices through which your employees are utilizing those data is also secure. Okay, so you are not securing any data here. You're not securing any users here. You're just trying to make sure that the devices through which the employees are accessing the corporate data are secure. And how do you do that? You deploy n number of policies in order to control the behavior of the device. Let's say if you say that, okay, I will give you permission to access a corporate data on your mobile, provided you enroll your mobile device to Intune so that I can block the camera on your phone. Maybe just an example, not every corporate is blocking the camera, but just an example of the capabilities. Now, at the same time, you can do, let's say you can only access corporate data via Edge browser, and you're not allowed to browse through Safari on iOS, or let's say Google Chrome on Android. Okay, so these are the number of policies, very basic policy that I'm talking about is around the control of the devices and how that particular device will interact with the data which is present on cloud. Okay, so the restrictions. So the restrictions and the hold on, I'm admitting few more people inside, it seems.
Yes, here, Kane.
All right, so yeah, so it's basically the Intune or any of the MDM solution. They came into existence because the corporate had a need of controlling the devices where the corporate data were available. Okay, so in Intune presently you are able to control Windows, Android, iOS, Linux, and Chrome OS. These are the five platforms that you will have control with Intune. If you enroll your device, there are certain scenarios where you don't have to enroll your device, but to use certain application, which will also prevent few kind of data leak, which are known as mobile application management. So we'll discuss that later in the due course of action on this particular course. So coming to Azure AD, because I think all the Azure journey or the Microsoft SaaS journey should start from here. So Azure Active Directory, if you have not heard already, it's basically another SaaS application, which is basically responsible for authentication, is responsible for doing conditional access, and is responsible for validating licenses, because SaaS, as you would know, works on a license-based model. Okay, so these SaaS providers are tied to a license, which is verified when a particular user is trying to access Intune related service or Office 365 related service or Teams related service. So you are paying per user, uh, uh, per license. Okay, so you have to buy license for every users to attain those services that are provided by any SaaS service. Now things are a little different if you are going with the Azure compute service. Let's say if you are utilizing Azure VM or Azure storage account or Azure log analytics service, you have a method called as subscription through which Microsoft charges you. Now those are basically the Azure compute service, and this Intune is basically Intune SaaS service. All the SaaS services are related to licenses. All the compute services are related to subscription. Okay, just keep that in mind. Now, the important thing to understand here is how does an authentication work? Now, ideally, 90% of the people who are working in Intune need not uh, worry about how authentication work. But if you want to grow, if you want to diverse your job career and not keep yourself limited to Intune, Azure AD is a must thing that you have to go through. So I will be teaching a lot more on Azure AD and how does it interact with Intune, because it will make more sense to you if some of you are in a support related uh, jobs where you have to troubleshoot what exactly happened, and there you would see the understanding of like how exactly Azure AD integrates with Intune and any of these SaaS applications. So tomorrow, if you go to a different Azure related technologies, you won't you won't find it very difficult to understand that thing, because 40% of every SaaS is basically Azure. It goes in authentication, authorization, conditional access, and then the corresponding different technologies comes into picture. Now, okay, few of you who are already working in Intune and have little bit of experience with uh, Azure AD, Azure Active Directory, you would recognize what I'm talking about in this particular thing. You don't have to worry if you don't know, because we'll be going in detail about in this course. And with respect to Windows or iOS and Android, these are the three different joint status that we'll be discussing upon and why they are important. I have just made a small PPT to make sure that this is important and that we register it. After going through this PPT, I have a whiteboard where I'll go ahead and explain, starting from Azure AD, that why exactly that is important and the authentication part. Now, this is the main few elements of Microsoft Intune, which most of the corporates really evolves around. Okay, you might see a few of the things missing. If your organization is basically utilizing iOS devices only, you might see dep and automated device enrollment missing. But the autopilot is kind of the same thing that is done in Windows, so I have just selected that name. So with Intune, most of the corporates are either utilizing Intune for doing this many number of tasks, or are struggling to troubleshoot issues with related to this particular topics. So you will learn Microsoft Intune enrollment in different platforms, what are compliance policies, how do compliance policies work, what are application deployment scenarios, how do you deploy an application. Most of the Intune folks would be working on this, because if you're working in a Microsoft Intune application related department, you'll be working with different software engineers to make sure that you receive a package and then you push it via Intune, basically so that every user who has enrolled their devices to Intune would have access to those applications. Similarly, many of you might relate that if you're working in Intune, your corporate would be utilizing Wi-Fi and VPN profile to give you corporate access. And there are n number of issues that happens in here. And how do you narrow down to the scope of like, what is an Intune problem, what is a network problem, what is a device OS problem, what is a third party problem? Okay, so because this is also very important to understand and segregate your scope, that okay, if this is the issue, how do I approach to troubleshoot it? Okay, because not everyone would get a chance to be a part of the admin team who is doing the deployments. Okay, deployments are easy. You get to see the set of instruction that okay, my company needs this, these are the security things that I have to deploy. You choose the configuration, done, assign a group, and that's done. The main trouble starts when you have to troubleshoot what went wrong. Now at that point of time, if let's say if you are utilizing a Android device, if you have never seen a logcat uh, logs, maybe you would have to see logcat logs in coming future after learning Intune or after working with Intune to troubleshoot few of the scenarios, unless you want a easy way of like opening a support case with Microsoft and let them go through it. I always say if to my colleagues who are getting this training, is if you want to learn and grow, do all the labs, all the technologies, all the troubleshooting in your scenario before you ask help from Microsoft, before you ask help from other providers who are providing you with this kind of support. So with this training, you will be at a very much good stage of identifying the problems, identifying what is the root cause, unless and until it is coming from the cloud provider, that is Microsoft in this point of in this context, because Intune is managed by Microsoft. Obviously, you will not be able to troubleshoot anything which happens at the back end of Microsoft, but at the very different stage, you'll be able to figure out if the issue is actually related to Intune backend, or it's related to the user, or if it's related to the device, or it's related to a network, those kind of things. Okay. Now, these are the basically 9 scenarios wherein most of the time the corporates work around or work upon. The reports being one of the major chunks where uh, one or of the every other team will be working on making sure that the reports are correct. Now, in the past, there have been many issues where you would have noticed, if you're working in Intune, that the reports are not so great, where you are trying to see or you're trying to match that, okay, I have this many Windows compliant devices, but somehow the report uh, doesn't uh, say so. Okay, so there were lots of mismatches, but there were lots of work being done by Microsoft on those reports. They have moved to a new architecture as well, so hopefully that should resolve. Now we'll also deal with some kind of custom reporting that you can do, and how do you integrate with log analytics, so that if you or if few of the folks, if you are on call, if you are trying to do something extra for your team, or just to make sure that you get an extra attention from your management, that okay, this is the extra thing that I can do with Intune, we can also do that towards the end of this course. like what are the few extra things that would get you a limelight. Few of the things like how do you integrate Power Automate with Intune to do a number of things. Also to do log analytics, exports of the Intune things. Okay, now this is completely with respect to Intune. Obviously, there will be few of the folks on this call who will be part of the security team, where you will be integrating Microsoft Intune with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and then Microsoft Defender, M365 Microsoft Defender, and then in Microsoft Sentinel. So if you guys are also interested in that, we can also have a one session of understanding how every security solution of Microsoft's fits together, and what kind of role does Intune play in that. So if someone of you, if you are part of security, uh, do reach out to me and let me know if you want that course. Okay. Let me go to whiteboard and start with a basic of Azure AD. Okay. Now, with the boom of cloud technologies, definitely the Microsoft solution was to come up with a Azure AD SaaS solution, where it was basically to store your user information and does a whole sort of different play in your authentication and authorization of things. Now consider this with, let's say if you have an on-premises AD, okay, a typical working scenario of a user authentication would look like that. Okay, you had a domain controller and the user would have to get a Kerberos token to get authenticated. In Azure AD, all those things doesn't work. Okay, there is a subset of Kerberos which works, but it doesn't work on that way. This Kerberos was an on-premises protocol of authentication. The cloud works on OAuth and OpenID Connect. Okay, so all these terminologies and all those things changes when you move to cloud. Uh, in Azure, let's say if you have if you have logged on to, let's say, Office 365, your Outlook or anything, you would see normally a username and password prompt, right? That, okay, insert the username and the password here. Now you typically go ahead and let's say if someone you on the call are working for IBM, let's say you are abc@ibm.com. Pardon my spelling and handwriting to be exact. Okay, so if someone of you who are known who are working with Azure AD, they would know that how exactly this authentication happens. But if you don't know, here's a small glimpse. Now, what happens if you put in a username here is what that particular application does is it takes @ domain name, and it then filters out all the different domain and tenants that Azure AD has, finds out where the IBM sits, and it redirects your authentication request to that particular tenant ID. Now the tenant, if you don't know, is home for your company in Azure AD. Any entity and your company would have created a tenant in Azure AD and is building your cloud organization under that. Let's say IBM would be one tenant. Similarly, different corporates would have their own tenants. The initial marking or the initial name goes like, let's say ibm.onmicrosoft.com, and it might be like on Microsoft.com. Let's say if you're from Wipro, it might be wipro.onmicrosoft.com. And then they can go on verifying their custom domain that they own. So IBM would be verifying ibm.com and Wipro might be verifying wipro.com. Okay. So these are the domains which get then attached to that particular tenant of Azure AD. And that is used when you are trying to use you do an authentication with Azure AD. Now, why would you do a authentication with Azure AD? Now, in order for access of resource which is protected by Azure AD, okay, let's say, I'll give you a small example. Let's say your organization is using M365 licenses, okay? That means you have access to Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, Teams, okay? Now, how do you log into Teams? Normally it's single sign-on, you don't have to log in every day, but the first time that you would have done it is you would have gone to Office 365 applications or Teams, wherever, and you would have entered your credentials there. Now, it would have followed this approach of finding, let's say, IBM.com, and then something called as managed or federated or unmanaged. Managed means Azure AD is responsible for authenticating you, like it's storing your user ID and password. Federated means you might not trust Azure AD with your credentials, so you would have ADFS scenario where you would have an on-premises infrastructure and you are just, giving. Let's say if this is your AD, it will have a ADFS server which will help you facilitate in authentication if there is a Azure Active Directory scenario involved for federation. So these are the different scenarios which we will discuss in detail in this due course of action. But this is independent of Intune. Any of the SaaS application that you come across, Dynamics, Office 365, Defender, Intune, Yammer, Teams, anything, or Outlook, you will see this kind of authentication coming into picture. Now, it is only when that this Azure AD user authentication has been done, the device authentication starts. Okay. Now, if you are enrolling a device to Intune, there are n number of steps that happen after you, let's say, give your UPN. UPN is nothing but your kind of email address where, let's say, this user principal name. Okay, so this is a UPN, also called as email address, but those are not the same things. Okay, this are basically used for doing or finding your particular identity. The Azure Active Directory works on UPN authentication, and your Outlook email address might be same as your UPN. Okay, but both are two different things. Now, once we are going into the enrollment session, we will talk about how a Intune enrollment looks like. How does a device gets Intune enrolled? What is the meaning of Intune enrollment, and where or logs are there that you can basically check or basically see that, okay, these are the steps or these are the uh, scenarios. So we'll take Android, iOS, and Windows scenarios to see, to basically help you understand how can you see what exactly Intune might be doing. Now, this is not required. You might not see this on a daily basis. This becomes especially important if you are someone who are trying to get into a Intune job, right? Someone from a team can ask you, how does an Intune enrollment looks like? Now, your answer shouldn't be close to, okay, you enter your username and password, it gives you this prompt. So what you're trying to say is the user view or the front end view of what is happening. The main gist or the what is happening behind is the actual crust of the situation, right? If you're able to understand that particular part, that what is happening in the logs, and if you're able to understand that, boom, you are there, right? So we'll help you with that also, that how a proper Intune enrollment looks like, how does even a Intune device ID gets created, and why it's unique to every other device ID, right? And the similar thing would be with Azure device ID. So we'll discuss all those things. We'll also help you set up Intune test labs for those who are new to Intune or who are migrating to Intune from some other MDM. So we'll be sharing you some links where you can start with your Intune lab, because unless and until you are not doing labs and uh, reading the logs on your own, this training is not going to help you. Okay, I can help you with what are the things which are there in Intune, how does the process looks like, how does the logs would look like. But if you're not reading on your own, it's going to be a waste. Okay, so
चहा बरा होता
with
नाही आजचा जास्त दूध होता नाही तर नसतं दूध
hold on. Okay, that's quite all right. Okay, so one of the important things in Intune basically is to understand how to rule out Intune. Being an Intune engineer, that okay, if the issue is from Intune, or the issue is from Azure AD, or the issue is from uh, operating systems, right? Let's say you have let's say you were an admin, okay, and you deployed one particular configuration profile, okay. This is again, I'm skipping many things between here and here because I believe this is a demo session, and most of you might have understanding of that. But once we are into the course, I'll go step by step, okay. So if you, even if you don't understand this, that's fine. So let's say you are into Intune portal, and I'll share you my screen after some time also to just give you a look of that. Let's say your security team has come up with a policy requirement that all your Windows 10 devices should have BitLocker encryption. Okay. Now, this is a very common practice, and majority of the companies are already doing it and have already done that. Let's say you and as admin deployed this particular config policy on Windows 10 devices or 11 to be specific. Okay. Now, in this scenario, you'll have to understand how does a policy that you created, let's say you are an admin sitting in Europe, okay, and this device is somewhere in US, okay, then how does a policy which got created on Intune admin portal reaches all the way to this particular device, okay? We will discuss that, how that happens, and what are the things that you can check on this particular Windows devices that will make sure that will help you understand, okay, if you got the right policy, what is happening on the BitLocker thing, and uh, how to troubleshoot if something goes wrong. Okay, let's say if you have deployed a BitLocker policy, it reached the Windows 10 machine, but it's not taking any effect. Okay, this is also one of the common scenarios in many of the enterprises that I see, that the Intune portal will say everything is correct. The device would show that, okay, in the logs that, okay, I have got the policy, but the actions or the actual component like the BitLocker would not be encrypted. Now, how do you troubleshoot those kind of scenarios? Who is at the stake here? Who should troubleshoot? Okay, now if you are a very big organization, you might have different teams to handle all those scenarios. Like you might have a Windows team, you might have an Intune team, you might have a security team, okay? You might have a network team. Now, if something to fail at the network level here, you would be easy to understand, okay, there's a network thing in place, so maybe I have to route it to network guys, okay? Uh, if I have deployed the logs, sorry, if I have deployed the policy and the policy is not taking effect, maybe the component owner, BitLocker, like who owns BitLocker, it's Windows. So it's Windows who is going to troubleshoot further. Okay. Now these are the scenarios and these are the common things that we'll be discussing of like how exactly you would figure out that who is that uh, question here. Another normal scenario is with APNS certificate, right? The Apple Push Notification Service, and how exactly it plays an important role into your Intune enrollment. Okay, that is very important to understand. And this normally you wouldn't notice until this gets expired, but it's a very important question in the Microsoft Intune interview questions. So if you're trying to get into Intune team, this is often a question they would ask, that how exactly an APN certificate plays an important role in an iOS device. Okay, and similarly, let's say if you're trying to push an application on Android device, okay, and that particular Android device is not able to see that application, let's say not able to see the application as 0, and there is another device which is able to see the application which is present in the same group. Now, how do you troubleshoot that? Now, these are the scenarios that most of the corporate would face. And at this present, in this particular scenarios, then you will have to troubleshoot like what exactly is the make and model of this Android, how does it is it's different from this, how exactly the application deployment works. Like from Intune portal, how do you deploy an application to mobile device and how does it get available? What are the different types like available or uh, required? And what is the difference? And what do you see in the logs to make sure that, okay, if Intune has done its job, then who's next? So what are the things that you would see in here under logcat? Logcat is basically the OS specific logs, which it will show you the interaction of Intune and the operating system. If you have, let's say, company portal is basically the Intune logs. It's an application which is utilized for enrolling the device and syncing with Intune for the compliance thing. We will also discuss that how exactly that works when we are in the compliance um, uh, session. Okay, now the company portal logs will tell you all about what is happening between Intune and uh, the device. Okay, so it's always like how the Intune is pushing the policy, what is Intune doing, and then the reporting. So we will also then understand how the reporting works. Okay, now the reporting has a different struggle for many organizations that I've seen that, okay, I have deployed this, Intune admin says I have deployed this on Intune, but the portal says something different, that it's not deployed. We will understand how the reporting mechanism works on a particular device and how does that syncs back to Intune for the reporting part. Okay, we will discuss that. And one important thing is basically if someone gets a chance, I always recommend them to move across the security suites of Microsoft. That if you understand, let's say Intune is here and you have a direct connection with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which is MDE, that gets connected to your M365 Defender. Okay, so this gives you all access to what is happening on this particular, let's say if there is a Windows machine, what is happening on Windows machine, what kind of process is run, what kind of network event that happened. It basically captures, this MD basically captures the event logs of this and the audit logs. Okay, it makes your job easier, and then this gets integrated to the Microsoft SIM solution, which is Sentinel. So if you learn all this complete package, it's going to be very beneficial for you in the coming security world, because has been huge investment for Microsoft and all the other providers in security, and Intune plays a small role in it in just managing the devices. Okay, so this can lead you to, you know, the whole different set of walls of security as well if you are interested. Intune would basically be uh, important for those organizations as well, where the management of bulk devices were a trouble point, right? Let's say if you have Windows machines, if you have, let's say, thousands of Windows machines and your admins were struggling to how to do a Windows update, they would be typically using SCCM normally. Okay. Uh, to manage and update those things, or maybe for applications deployment as a package and also. But Intune is capable of doing all those sort of things. Currently, it is not capable of managing the servers. So if you are looking for, or if your organization is looking for the server, then Intune is not for you. But for every other client OS, you can utilize Intune to deploy applications, do a Windows update, even do a M365 update. So one of the major scenario in big corporates is the M365 um applications. So one of the common scenarios that you might face is how do you deploy an M365 application and also update them just to make sure that they are secure. Now, so in this scenario, you have different options, like you might have Intune, you might have SCCM, You might have the servicing profile, which is done via config.office.com portal. That's a different portal, but you will have understanding of how exactly you take control of M365, you take control of Windows updates, you take control of applications, and it gets interesting if you are into a investigating force of security. Let's say if a certificate based authentication, uh, if you love the certificate based authentication, the Intune would be a very good playground for you, because majority of the companies, the big companies who are concerned about their networking security, they often push Wi-Fi and VPN profile via Intune. Now, this would basically comes down to a certificate-based authentication. Now, ideally, if there's a networking team involved, they would have this thing, but you would also have a play of understanding how a TLS works, how TLS 1.2 works, because Intune has moved to TLS 1.2, and now they have started to use 1.3 as well, and how exactly those certificates are important. Okay, now the certificates that you see in Windows Store will be showing you like how exactly that happens and what is exactly a certificate chain building process, so that you can also learn if that's a requirement. um, we will also have a few of these sessions for the people who are already working in corporates and have corporate level Intune issues. Okay, so in starting few weeks, these people might see this Intune training as a basic thing, but at the basic, I'll try to make sure that I bring on those information which normally uh, we don't see in public, but I'll try my best to make sure that we have that mix of basic level understanding of how Intune works with each thing. Plus, if you are working with a corporate and you have some issues, let's say you deployed a Autopilot scenario and in your corporate there are 5 devices which are not going via Autopilot, you can bring on those scenarios with me and we can troubleshoot them together. Okay. All right. It's just for the people who have not seen the Intune. I'll just share my screen to show them the Intune console. How does the Intune console looks like? But if you have already working on Intune, this is nothing new for you. So I'll be also sharing how do you get a normal Intune tenant and what are the different things that is available here and what are the different things that you can play around with. Obviously, this portal has been changed a lot over a period of last 2 years. Earlier it was Windows Intune, then it changed to Microsoft Intune, then Microsoft changed it to Microsoft Endpoint Manager. Now again they have changed it back to the Microsoft Intune name. Okay, so don't get confused. This is Microsoft Intune. After some time, I think this name also would get changed. Okay. Um, Endpoint security is an important blade if you are into security and into Intune. This is a very interesting blade that you will work with. Mostly the teams that are aligned to into Intune working with the device enrollment, application deployment, and reporting. I have seen very few corporate teams who work on security, but if you are working in that and have questions and if you want to learn, definitely you can reach out to me and I'll help you with that. So with respect to that, the reporting plays an important role in corporates because the management would always be like which all devices are not compliant. I need to make sure that I'm secure. Okay, so this reporting blade will be your buddy here. Intune data warehouse is another one concept of giving you a OData feed parameter, basically a link that is able to give you a dump of your data that you can integrate with Power BI. So this is a very advanced and very powerful tool, which you can do a number of reporting depending on your need. Similarly, in Microsoft Endpoint Security, you would have Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And if you are playing around with security, you would have access to Security Sentinel and all those of amazing cool stuff that you can do. All the other things which are core to Intune are let's say here, where you have the device configuration and the compliance policy. Now, majority of the scenarios would be around the configuration, compliance policy, and the application deployment. Face issues with, let's say, you have deployed some configuration profile and that is not taking effect, or you are not sure how to do that. Conditional access that you see here is showing up here, but it's basically a concept of Azure Active Directory, and that comes after authentication, user authentication. And Intune plays a very important role in that, in conditional access. So, and this is also a very common factor where the Azure Active Directory team and the Intune team has a quarrel like, okay, this is your scenario, this is your scenario, you deal with it. But there's a very clear way of understanding which team has to investigate, okay? And I'll just give you a small, just because I just also want to open this for any questions. So in for the conditional access to work, okay, I'm just giving a level 1000 feet, okay? We'll go in a very detailed way covering this. If you are a user and you are trying to access, let's say, Outlook, okay, and your company has applied a conditional access which needs that your device has to be enrolled. Now, there is one parameter that you have to check which says require device to be compliant, okay? Now, this compliant, although this particular check attribute sits in Azure AD, but the component which is authorized to mark this attribute in Azure AD is Intune. So if you enroll a device to Intune, you will have to, let's say, if you have pushed 3 compliance policy that the device has to be at least 5-digit PIN, or the device has to do this or that, or it has to be encrypted. Okay, let's say you have deployed 3 policy and the device meets all those compliance policy, the device will be recorded as compliant, and this particular device attribute will be marked in Azure AD as compliant. Now, when the Azure AD is doing the compliance check, it will check what is the value of this particular attribute in my database. If it says compliant, it will give you access. If it's not, it will not give you access. Now, the very important thing is to understand how Azure AD does that check. If you understand that, you will never have a problem in understanding how conditional access work, and especially in those scenarios where if you are an admin side, if you are a Intune team, you will see a scenario where you would be able to see that the device is compliant, but Azure AD is still saying that your device is not compliant and thus blocking you. Okay, so there is a very special thing which goes into the picture of how Azure AD treats whether a device is compliant or not. Okay, now that is something that we will understand in due course of action. Uh, with 8 minutes remaining, I would want to clear any doubts you might have regarding this course, or you would have, or you want me to ask about. So open to you all, guys. Let me know, type in or chime in if you have any questions. Okay, so I'm not getting any question. Not sure if I'm audible. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. All right.
Hi, Robin.
Hey there. Yeah.
Sunil this side. Total, how much duration of this course? Approximately.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. And when I was trying to curate the duration, it typically expands the normal duration that we have in this market. But I think it would, if you really want to learn Intune, it would take at least 2 months for us to go in detail. At least 2 months.
Okay, actually, currently I'm working in SCL as a system admin, but we don't have much idea about that Intune. But I dedicatedly I want to learn Intune, and I want to move my career in Intune sector, Intune
Sure.
field. So I want to know about the duration of course and pay range, what is the fee details and structure, and what is the prerequisites.
Okay, there is no prerequisite as such because whatever the prerequisites are, I'll be teaching in the course. Normally, the prerequisites would have been Azure Active Directory, little bit of networking and OS troubleshooting, but I am planning to include that in my course because that makes sense for me. Okay, so no prerequisite as such. Okay, if you're already working in HCLs, you have already the basic of everything, so nothing as prerequisite. The only thing is, if you get a chance, read more about Azure Active Directory. That would help.
Okay, and it's only weekend batches and per day.
Only weekend.
Okay.
Yeah. And this can also extend. Let's say if you have questions, because we will have options for questions and all. So this can also get extended after 2 months if you have follow-up questions. Okay.
Okay, and recordings also, right?
Recordings also, yeah.
So what is the process of enrollment?
Okay, so I'll be sharing a number at the end of this.
Okay.
They will be helping you. That's my team. It's this number basically. Okay, you can contact on this number and they'll be helping you with the further queries.
Okay, dear. Thank you.
Yeah. Kaushal is asking, can you brief me about this course and a bit on job opening and pay range? Yeah, the course is basically about Microsoft Intune, but I'll also discuss the related technologies. So um, you can be confident that the things that you are going to work in your Intune job will be taught in this course. Okay, and the Intune job opening with respect to that, I can clearly see a very bright thing for Intune because if you're working on Intune, your company would have already started either moving to Intune or have migrated to Intune or would have a plan to at least discuss the Intune. Okay, so it's just that Intune is not managing the server, but for everything else, it just makes sense to use a cloud provider and not have enough workforce for SCCM. So the openings are going to be huge. I see a lot of openings. I see Microsoft is also hiring for their support team. I see different companies are also hiring for Intune, and pay range is totally dependent on your experience. Okay, uh, I cannot comment on that, but uh, it has a good scope. Google Endpoint Device Management and Intune, which big companies prefers. So if you talk about the Fortune 500 companies, I see them deflecting more towards Intune, but at the same time, there are many companies who also go with Google, but with the ease and the flexibility of integrating with other Microsoft solutions, I see Intune on a heavier side. Okay, so if I have to choose, I would go with Intune. Google obviously is a very good option, but the main problem happens at the point where you have to integrate with, let's say, conditional access, autopilot, reporting, and all those kind of things. Okay, so in those scenarios, considering this, so those scenarios, Intune is a good thing to learn. Many companies are thus moving to Intune for this scenarios because they would have invested in Microsoft technologies, not just Intune but others, and it just makes sense for them to have a Microsoft product because it will be easier for them to integrate with everything. Like I gave you an examination, like example of uh, uh, how this particular thing works with security. Okay, so those kind of things, because if you're using a different third-party software for security, let's say Splunk or something else, it would be a little bit difficult for you to integrate. It's possible, it will be a little extra overhead. Aaron asked, is the training course going to be chargeable? Yeah, Pragya, it's going to be chargeable, definitely. Aaron is asking the deep explanation of Autopilot. Definitely the Autopilot uh, is going to be very detailed. Windows Autopatch is something, I'll be honest, I have to explore. That's a new thing that they have launched, but it's related to that the updates, Windows updates and M365 updates. But yeah, we can also try and add that. I'm not confirming for Windows Autopatch in detail, but definitely for Autopilot, definitely in detail. I have not seen many of the big organizations moving to Windows Autopatch just yet, but they are exploring the options. Pragya, talk to the number which is shown on the screen. I'll also paste in the chat window, and bit about this training company and you. So I'm an independent trainer, and I have a tie-up with JOYATRES Technologies, and that's how I am able to get all these, colleagues like you to train basically with. And I am working in IT with respect to Azure and Azure Active Directory and Intune from the last 9 years, and in Intune with last 4 years.
Nice, Ravi. So we have approximately E3 license in my company scenario, so we can use Intune license also.
Yes, you can use
Need
any
to
license. Yes.
separate purchase for that, and we use in Intune services.
You can
in the
use
same.
Intune with E3. Yeah. You're talking about M365 E3, right? Not the Office
Yeah,
365.
yes.
Yeah. M365 is sufficient.
Okay.
Yeah. And is there any platform to discuss about issue faced by Intune admin? I have not made any platform to discuss with me or among us, but there, if you're talking about online, there are different things where people are discussing. You have Microsoft Tech Community, you have Reddit, you have Microsoft Q&A platform that you can discuss. But frankly speaking, you will get, if you are getting a problem that needs a deep level investigation, you might have to either work with yourself or work with Microsoft. I don't see any deep thing that the admin might share unless and until they have faced the same thing. Okay, if they have faced the same thing, Reddit is a good option that I have seen that people discuss. Pragya, so difference between M365 and Office 365. M365 has Windows and lots of other things integrated in the license. Office 365 is just the Office productivity tool that you have normally. Office Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneDrive, those kind of stuff. M365 licenses is what the companies are mostly going for now. So if you're working for a company that would be more interested in M365, it's a big, and they prefer security because M365 also will have security solutions and reporting and auditing, all those kind of stuff.
Okay, so Office 365 E3 license can help with enrolling the device in Intune.
Office 365 E3 licenses, I don't think so. But I think there would be a clear feature comparison of what is available and what is not available. So we can go through it. But I don't think Office E3 is having Intune by default.
Okay, so I guess M365 F1 is always required to enrolling the device in Intune.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What
And
is
these
the
are
certification code about this from Microsoft side?
I'm not sure on the code name, but yeah, there is definitely a.
Is that MS101? Might be, I think. I'm not sure.
It's MD101.
MD, okay.
Yeah. Whether upcoming training will cover entire hybrid config manager, Windows environment, not the config manager, but I'll definitely cover the hybrid one. I'll not cover co-management.
Okay, so I have one more question. So certification MD101 is enough for being an Intune engineer?
Let me check the content of 101. Okay, I'm just opening it. Hold on. Explore model management, implement device enrollment, configure user device profile, explore application management, manage authentication and compliance. Okay. Windows client security, deploying using on-premises based tools, deploying using cloud. Yep, looks pretty much good for me. What's your goal for this? Like you are concentrated on completing the certification?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm an engineer, Intune engineer, but I also want to take a certification. Either it's a MD or it's a MS. So I was just thinking if you can help me with the exact certification that can help me to
That
grow
would
my.
have a different, slightly different path, because as you can see that the examinations are based on certain topics, right? That you have to concentrate on those path. Those path might tend to miss on the few daily routines of Intune and the few of the concepts of Intune which are important. Okay, but I think if you are already working with Intune, and after going through this particular training, I would say you would have a pretty good understanding of what is this, and should be then comfortable for you to do this. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
But if you're just here for the certification, I would say then you can explore other options, because I might skip few of the things, or I might add few of the things which might not be in the certification. So, but I'll be covering the end-to-end Intune, and I hope that if you are not into Intune field after this course, you should be able to crack the Intune interviews. That would be my goal.
Okay. No, actually, I have listened from someone that certification have a advantage, like it's a additional benefit.
I somehow don't agree to that, but yeah, it varies. If a candidate comes to me, if I ask them questions, if they are not able to answer it, that's a straight no, even if they have 10 certificates. Okay, so I don't value certificates unless and until that's a very unique certificate that I know that has to go through a rigorous things to get that certificate. And these certificates, I don't think you can read. If you're already working in Intune, you can just read for 3 days and you can get this certificate.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so it's not, basically, if I'm hiring for Intune, I would not even look for this certificate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any discount can we expect for this course as being part of this training session? Kaushal will have to discuss on that number, although after 2 sessions, if you are still not good, I think at that point of time we can discuss something. But the detail at which I'm deciding the course on, I think you should be okay. I'm currently on a Google Workspace deployment. Is it recommended to go ahead with Intune Azure platform? I'm not sure. Can you please elaborate? Like, are you working on Google mobile device management solution and you are trying
Yes,
to learn?
currently,
Mhm,
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm currently on Google Workspace entire platform.
mhm,
So the device management and email and everything is on that platform. So
mhm.
I'm not yet explore on the Microsoft platforms like Azure and all.
So
So is it be great to go ahead with that?
honest answer to you, both are equally good. Okay, I'm not trying to like ask you to, you must join this course. If you understand that technology well, and if you see a scope of that, definitely go ahead with it, because there would be n number of companies who are going with Google Workspace also. There are n number of companies which are going with Intune also. Okay, and Google also have their own Google Cloud platform, like Microsoft has as Azure platform. So I don't think there would be much difference, but this is mostly on Intune, and I have seen majority of the big organizations are on Intune for majority of the things. Okay, can Google manage Linux and Windows? Hello?
Is it to me?
Yeah,
Hello?
it's to you.
Yeah, as I see the MDM platform currently, it
Mhm.
seems to be in very initial stage of development and
Yeah.
deployment, I would say, because Google launched Workspace back in 2009 or 10, I believe, for a
Mhm.
big enterprises, the large scale launch.
Mhm.
And there I see, like, since I'm also deploying some devices, I see a lot more things are into initial segment. So
Okay.
I think more company using the platform will be a more time consuming thing, I believe.
Again, every company tries to enhance their product and do things. So if you're comfortable, if you're understanding, if you see the scope, you can stick with Google Workspace. if I would have known the customer base on that particular thing, then I'll be able to take a decision. I can clearly see the customer base in Intune. That's why at present I can suggest to go with Intune, because it just makes sense that it has evolved. It has 5 different platforms to support. That's what I asked. If your Google Workspace can manage 5 different platforms, obviously the companies can also explore that. But if they are just on, let's say Android, maybe you can explore for Intune.
Yeah, so Apple devices, I was recently enrolling some Apple devices in my system. So it's quite complex to enroll Apple devices basically on Workspace.
Okay, so
So
Android
I got
and
the
iOS,
answer, yeah.
Android and iOS. So you can see 5 platform versus 2 platform, and then the integration with different other cloud technologies is normally what I have seen is if a company is utilizing Google Suite like Google Gmail for business and everything, it makes sense for them. If a company has already started with Microsoft ecosystem, it makes sense for them to go with Microsoft Intune. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Pragya is asking, please let me know how your Intune course is different from Udemy Intune course. I'm not sure what is there on Udemy, but I'm not sure if they would go in detail with log analysis and how the backend thing works and all those things. I am assuming that they would go with Intune enrollment on portal. How does it look like, and how does it look like on device? So I'm just planning to go a little bit into detail. So once I share the training plan, you can just compare, and if it makes sense for you to go with Udemy, just go with Udemy. The only thing that I can say is I can have a real world experience with lots of Fortune 500 companies and can go very deep with log analysis and understanding the scope very much in detail, and also with the integrating factors and special projects. If you have these things in Udemy, I think that's also a good thing then. Can you publish a training plan? Prateek, I'll be sharing a training plan. I was building that. It's not yet complete. I want to make sure that I capture all the details. I'll be sharing that with the JOYATRES Technologies, and they will forward you that by tomorrow. Okay. Any more questions? If you have any more questions after this call, feel free to reach out to the number mentioned on this screen, and or the JOYATRES Technologies, and they will pass it to me, and then I can answer. Okay. All right then. Thanks so much, guys, for your time, and I hope to see you in my next sessions.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Good day. Take care.